Welcome. This is episode 7 of the Lunar Observer. There has been some new Insomniac news, so yeah, I guess that means that we are around to talk about it. I am KBABZ.
I'm JMW566.
I'm Unzipped Zebra.
Which are apparently our hacker names, even though I can't hack my way out of a cardboard box or a text document.
Yeah, that's what Beast from Insomniac says, because he makes fun of us for not using our real names, but that's how people know me on the internet. No one's gonna know who I am, so...
So recently there's been a lot of Ratchet and Clank Into the Nexus news, and that is pretty much what this episode is about. And to help introduce us to that information, we shall start with the news. And the first news is that Ratchet and Clank Into the Nexus was given a playable demo at Gamescom in Germany. Along with it were a new batch of screenshots and a video of the demo narrated by creative director Brian Allgeier. The demo has Ratchet explore Miro ruins on planet Uruk as he searches for the Prog twins, Pollux, and battling Thugs for Less goons.
Yes, I'm jealous. I wish I could have been in Germany or at PAX Prime like I wanted to be.
Those fast-selling tickets.
So mad.
And the other piece of news is that a week after Gamescom, Insomniac held a live stream of that same Into the Nexus demo hosted by Brian Allgeier. Fans were given the opportunity to ask various demo-related questions both before and during the stream. Although I don't think it was a good idea having like 50 people constantly asking questions during the stream because it was hard to grab just one.
That's the same problem that happened with the Sunset Overdrive live stream, is they just had so many people bombarding the chat box with questions that it was like hard to keep track of any particular thing.
Is there going to be a rhino in it? Is there? I'm not sure that I understood the answer of yes.
And that does it for the short news segment, and we'll jump right into the first section of Into the Nexus, where we talk about weapons, gadgets, and gameplay.
My favorite part.
One of the new gadgets shown off at the Gamescom demo was the Grav Tether.
It's looking like it's going to be pretty interesting, especially how they're talking about, like, you're not just going to jump in and just kind of float. You can actually control the speed and movement as you go in, correct?
Yeah, like a puzzle version of the swing shot, almost.
Before I thought it seemed like it'd be pretty easy, but it seems like one of those things where you could probably fudge up and be pretty frustrated, but I guess we'll see.
That pretty much happened to nearly everybody who tried the demo. They would like activate the wrong one and they would waste all of their ammo because they weren't pressing the button that was being displayed on the screen correctly, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I liked how you noted that you could see like the circle button in the Grav Tether thing, and I thought that was really
It's called a grab
awesome
target.
because I didn't notice it, so good eye and really clever placement.
Yeah, do you think that sort of thing makes it a bit too easy, like putting on arrows to tell you the next grav target you should hit and making the target like a big circle button?
I wouldn't say so. Like, for me, like I said, I didn't notice it at first until like somebody explicitly pointed it out. Like, it didn't even occur to me, so it might be like that for some people. You always have the people that will cry about it, but I think it's fine, and it seems to kind of like fit in enough where you can notice it, but it's not like highlight or yellow sticking out like a sore thumb, like, oh my god, you're treating me like a child, stop.
And people have to remember that the game is also focused towards younger players too. So like, while everyone loves like tough puzzles, what's tough for you might not be tough for someone else. So I think I'm perfectly fine with subtle things and clues like that, as long as it's not too glaringly obvious in like the main portion. Now, what I'd like to see is how you had the challenge puzzles in A Crack in Time with Clank's time puzzles, where you could have the really awesome complicated things in there that are just for like gold bolts or platinum bolts or whatever kind of bolts, and not for progression of the story.
Yeah, I think there definitely needs to be some type of, well, it would be great if there was some type of functionality where, say, you would ask, have you played a Ratchet and Clank game before, or even have you played this game before, so that if you start the game or go into challenge mode, you're not explained how to use all the various different mechanics, because that was one of the problems most people had with the time puzzles, was that A, you couldn't skip them the first time around at least, and B, you had to go through the tutorial every time.
I liked skipping them in challenge mode. Very fun.
Yeah. You could also skip them if you waited around 10 minutes.
Really?
Interesting.
I never knew that.
Well, you have to wait around 10 minutes for each one.
I mean, at least that's a way for people that just can't get them to not be stuck in one spot and give up on the game because of it. Even though you could just Google it in like 30 seconds nowadays, but some people still don't do that for some reason.
Do you think, on the subject of making the game too easy with things being pointed out, what about the having the circle button hovering around the swing shot targets, or the square button above bolt cranks?
I don't really particularly see like a problem for it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it, especially when, like, the swing shot in particular, going from like a selectable like weapon / gadget to like just sort of a passive thing. There's had so many different controls for the swing shot that I think it's like, I know personally I've been in Ratchet and Clank games, like just going back and replaying and like jumping to my death because I expected to just press a certain button in swing shot and didn't.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest leap of faith back in the Upper Arsenal days, when you were told if you just jump towards the swing target and press circle, it will automatically equip. But you've played 2 games beforehand where that wasn't the case. It's like, I don't really trust this game to do this for me. So one of the new weapons that was, well, we knew about it beforehand, but it was shown in action at the Gamescom demo, along with a lot of other weapons, was the Winterizer.
It's one of my favorite looking weapons.
Yes.
Looks so cool.
It just throws in everything you think about winter and Christmas. The targeting reticule is a snowflake, and it's got a snow globe on it. It's got a candy cane, grips.
As you shoot it, the pattern has like snowflakes, and like it has the candy cane swirl coming out of the gun.
Yeah. Not to mention that when you fire it, you hear voices go la 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 la.
Thankfully, not KBABZ's voice doing that, though.
Yeah, I'll stick to Mr. Zircon.
But yeah, I really, really loved how they did the snowmen with the Winterizer. So when you shoot them and shoot the enemies with it, and they slow down first, then they turn into a snowman that basically resembles how the enemy was right before they died. So it's not just like, oh, they turn into a generic thing that's the same over and over again. Like, from what I saw during the live stream and the demo, like, it actually looks pretty different depending on what you get with it.
Yeah, so like the blade balls is just basically a snowball with arms on it.
I think that's like my favorite part of the weapon. I don't know if it's just me being an animation nerd or whatever, but I just love how the snowmen take the same pose. It looks so cool, and I love it so much.
Yeah, it's particularly funny when an enemy is shooting at you, like in a real gung-ho kind of way, and then you freeze them, and it's a snowman. It's like, watch out, I'm armed with a vicious candy cane!
Yeah, because when you freeze the enemies, their weapon actually will turn into a candy cane that they're holding. So, like, the blade balls that KBABZ mentioned earlier, they have little candy canes sticking out where the blades would have been. And it's pretty fantastic looking.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched the videos yet, you should go check it out.
Yeah, there's two versions. The commentary one that I mentioned in the news, and what's called the B-roll version, which is pretty much the same gameplay, but without Brian talking over it.
And I believe it's been said that it upgrades to give holiday presents that give you health and ammo.
Yeah, which is different for the morph weapons, because usually they leave behind something lethal, like the Quacker Ray in Up Your Arsenal that had the Duck Slay explosive eggs that roll towards your enemies.
I'm kind of skeptical about the holiday presents giving health and ammo, depending on how they do it, because, I don't know, a lot of times in other games, the morph weapons have felt overpowered on their own, or especially for like smaller groups of enemies, and if those are if the health and ammo is given out too often, I bet it could really wreck the balance. But
yeah, that's one thing that I was thinking about as well, just the balance issues, because in All for One, the Transmorpher was overpowered purely because of the fact that it had no ammo and it killed enemies relatively quickly.
Do we know if the Winterizer has ammo or not? Has that been seen? I haven't been paying attention to that.
It doesn't look like it has ammo at all. So it would
Interesting.
So it would drop ammo for all of your other weapons. Which brings up the question that the Rhino has been confirmed to be in Into the Nexus in some form. The question is that with the dropping of ammo, that makes me think back to the original Ratchet and Clank and Up Your Arsenal, where you could not get Rhino ammo from boxes. You had to buy it at the vendor.
So awful. I hated that so much.
Yeah.
I was so happy when I came across the Rhino ammo, and I don't even remember which Ratchet and Clank, but I was just like, oh my god, this is amazing. I don't have to buy it. Especially with how hard it is to get bolts in the first game.
Ooh, yeah. But we don't know exactly what it will do, this new Rhino.
Hopefully kill things.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's something more precise than the Kraken Time Rhino.
Yeah, the Kraken Time Rhino was basically a very overpowered shotgun. One of the weapons that was mentioned previously but revealed today was the Vortex Grenade, which it's basically like a glove version of the Rift Inducer, except it doesn't suck enemies in. Well, it's more like the Up Your Arsenal Rift Inducer mixed in with the Tornado Launcher, in the sense that it picks up enemies and keeps them in midair. Except this time you can shoot them while they're in midair.
And then there's an explosion.
Oh yeah, it explodes when it expires as well, which should finish off any enemies if you hadn't been able to kill them by then. One thing I noticed in the gameplay demo that Brian did was that if you chuck out a new Vortex Grenade, the previous one disappears immediately. Which is different from how weapons previously worked in the same manner, like the Tornado Launcher or the Groover Charm, where if you wanted to fire a new one, you had to wait until the first one you fired had expired so that you could toss out a new one.
I'm not sure whether I like that feature or not, because on the one hand it's really frustrating when you have, like, for example, the Tornado Launcher, when you shoot a tornado and it's like off going towards no enemies, and then someone like sneaks up behind you or whatever, and you want to turn around and shoot another one, but you can't because you have to wait for it to go out. But on the other hand, there are a lot of times with some weapons where I'll accidentally like hit the button twice or switch to it and use it when I already have one out or something, and just waste a lot of ammo.
I personally prefer the convenience because, at least with past Ratchet and Clank games, pretty much since going Commando, the cost of buying ammo is nearly inconsequential unless that weapon happened to be the Zodiac.
Yeah, I kind of miss the days when ammo was more expensive, because it really forced you to use a wider variety of weapons, and you couldn't just like get that one weapon to like level 5 or level 3 or whatever the max was in that game, and then just wreck everything with it. It'd force you to be more well-rounded.
I personally prefer the convenience of tossing out another one, because often with weapons like the tornado launcher was that I would fire it and it would immediately fall off a cliff. And then I have to wait for it to expire before I could fire another one and start damaging enemies for once.
Yeah, I had that problem all the time too.
The upgrade apparently fires multiple vortices, so when you toss one it creates like 2 or 3, I suppose? I don't really know how that would work because just the one is big enough.
Perhaps we'll get to a lot bigger enemies that need more vortices.
Yeah, that's true. Like, the vortices, say, combine together, like the Rift Inducer, to create a super Voltron vortex. Also shown during the Gamescom demo was the Nightmare Box.
Nightmare Box is another favorite of mine. I love the design of the creatures and things that are popping out of it so far.
That clown is scary, like legitimately scary.
It is.
All clowns are scary.
Nathan Drake would be pissing in his pants if Ratchet came across him with that weapon. It seems like a version of the decoy glove that I might actually use.
Decoy glove was really useful in full frontal assault, actually. Or, sorry, doppelbanger. It was very useful in full frontal assault. So I hope it'll be something just as useful as that. I think what really made the difference was the fact that in full frontal assault, it actually shot at enemies as well. It wasn't just literally a decoy.
Yeah, see, decoy glove, good for getting out of the level. Doppelbanger, good for actually killing things.
Yeah, the problem that I found with the decoy glove was the fact that it didn't have enough health.
Yeah, when enemies can kill it, like, in 5 seconds, it doesn't really do enough. It doesn't seem like the Nightmare Box is gonna be it's not gonna have that problem, because, like, in the demo, you see them playing, and you see a group of enemies, like, crowding around, slashing at it, or whatever, and it just powers through until it, like, explodes at the end.
And you see some awesome responses from the enemies being scared and lovely squash and stretch animation.
Yeah.
Love it.
So what do you think would be funny ideas for the Jack-in-the-Box thing to pop out to be scaring enemies with, like a cheat, or just something to actually be included?
Twerking Quark.
Ugh!
Oh, God.
I was just going to say Captain Quark in his maid costume, but that's worse.
Why not Captain Quark in his maid costume twerking?
I'd like to see, like, a mouse pop out of the box, like, sort of the whole elephant being terrified of a mouse thing. Just, like, a little tiny one, not even something giant, and just have everything be scared and, like, jump up in the air.
What about a sand mouse?
Those still exist?
They showed up in the first game for a little bit for the Sonic Summoner. You remember to pick it up.
I thought you said a sad mouse, and I was like, I don't see how that's much different from a mouse.
Sad trombone.
Brian mentioned during the preview that the Nightmare Box upgrades to directly attack enemies. So not only are you scared to death by a robotic zombie clown head, but it will then attack you.
Terrifying. I would be afraid.
Another weapon that was shown during the Gamescom demo was the Temporal Repulsor, which seems to be the shotgun for this new game.
I know I keep like saying all of these weapons are my favorite, but this one is really awesome. I love shotgun weapons, and it's maybe my definite favorite so far. Maybe.
Maybe her definite favorite so far, maybe. Well, it's definitely my favorite weapon they've shown so far for this game, because just shooting enemies and then having them just freeze in midair, and that's just amazing. It actually reminds me kind of Bulletstorm, except less campy.
It's so cool.
The weapon looks badass. It's like it seems to return to the old PS2 days where the weapons, when you upgraded them, were as big as Ratchet was. Makes you wonder how he lifts those things.
Magic, hammer space, etc.
He can lift.
The temporal repulsor, for those who haven't seen the video yet, when you fire it, it throws enemies back, but when you upgrade it to the alpha temporal repulsor, it freezes enemies in midair so you can shoot them with something else. But I also noticed that when it was upgraded, it didn't gain an entirely new name. It seemed to have the alpha tag slapped onto the beginning like the full frontal assault weapons when they upgraded.
Which is less confusing, but still kind of disappointing. Because it was always amazing when you finally get something upgraded to the full level, like the negotiator becoming the judicator, and it just like, that's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, some of them are less creative. For example, the shock blaster becoming the shock cannon, just replacing a word. But then you have Chimpomatic becoming the Chimpositron.
That sounds like something Quark would say.
Yeah, I prefer the unique names, although I can understand after the fact that Insomniac have made Ratchet games for over 10 years now, and through all of the Ratchet games there have been over 160 weapons, not counting the upgrades. I can imagine at this point it would be a bit difficult to come up with upgraded names at this point.
I think they'd be able to do it. I don't think it's oh shit, we can't come up with any new names. It's probably more like, yeah, let's keep people from getting confused and just keep it like unchanging.
It was mentioned, but none of these were shown, that there are a lot of returning weapons in the game as well. We know about the fusion grenades, but we've also seen that the Warmonger is back, and so is Mr. Zircon.
And amazingly,
So pumped.
even though these are like pretty awesome weapons and a lot of people's favorites, some people are upset about it and have to cry about it because they're not making new weapons. They're not making enough of them.
They didn't seem to mind in going commando and up their arsenal when 5 weapons from the game before it returned.
I think it's a good thing that they're bringing back the Warmonger, Zircon, and the fusion grenades, because it just makes the games feel more connected when you have some of the same weapons. It's not like you're traveling to a different galaxy or something. Like, it's still part of the future saga, even if it's the epilogue, and I think it's good that they're including some of the same weapons to make it feel more tied in.
I'm curious to see as to how Mr. Zircon has changed in some way.
Yeah, Insomniac have implied that Mr. Zircon has been altered somewhat for this game. And I think I found a clue as to what that may be, because when Brian restarted the demo, when he was doing the live stream, the help pop-up says, upgrade Mr. Zircon to get a family-based upgrade, or something along those lines.
Interesting.
Mrs. Zircon is here to kill you.
And so is Zircon Jr.
Maybe a family dog, too.
Yeah,
Can we hope for the American dream?
the family dog, so that would be the Hound of Doom then.
Yes.
Amazing.
Which would mean that Zircon's upgrade would either be you are given a random Zircon family member when you equip Mr. Zircon, or you get all of them at once, protecting you like the Symphonoids from going commando.
That would be boss. Do we agree on whether or not the returning weapons are a good or bad thing? Is it generally a good thing?
I think so long as it's done in moderation. I mean, 4 or 5 weapons is okay. Well, actually, that depends on how many weapons there are.
If there are 7 weapons in the entire game,
Yeah, then then it's okay for 2 of them to be returning weapons.
Judging by the previous few Ratchet and Clanks having like multiple different quick select wheels, I don't think we're gonna have the problem of only having like 6 or 7 weapons, so I think it'll be fine.
yeah.
should be clear that when Brian played the demo, it was a debug that gave him all of the weapons that they were willing to announce. Because it's the first level, we'll probably only have like 1 or 2 of those. We also saw during the Gamescom demo and Brian's playthrough the Nexus Dimension gameplay,
which looks really interesting and another new way to control Clank.
Yeah, it seems like Clank has been the spot where Insomniac takes an idea that would be better suited, that you would expect to be in an indie game, and it makes it a Clank mini game.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, honestly, like visually, of my Blaster Runs Hot, with just like the side rollingness and stuff.
Clank ventures into the Nether regions. That's pretty much what his gameplay is. It seems like you use the D-pad to select which direction gravity pulls for Clank, so he can walk on what is, for us at least, the ceiling or the walls and stuff like that.
It should be interesting to see how complicated those get with the gravity puzzles.
Yeah, because the one that we saw basically amounted to a very, if I gotta be honest, boring looking corridor with a couple of pits on the floor and the ceiling.
I'm looking forward to basically making Clank fly through the air by changing the gravity to avoid things.
He flies through the air with the greatest of ease, that daring young Clank on the flying helipack, or something. Yeah, but Clank goes into the Nether regions, so that he can free a Nexus and bring it to their dimension, which apparently causes an explosion, because it's Ratchet and Clank. What else would it do? But it definitely seems to be a focus on stuff like gravity and altering of gravity and stuff like that with nearly everything in the game, to be honest.
And I think that's really the first time in the series that they've focused, well, I guess with time in the Crack in Time, but it still wasn't to this degree where a lot of the weapons even focus on gravity.
Yeah.
Sounds like to me that they got an upgrade in their game engine or something for being able to do a lot of that stuff, so you're going to use it for all it's worth. And it looks pretty fun. So
yeah, it does. But we haven't really seen this theming of weapons and stuff in any Ratchet game before. I think the closest that we have gotten to that was Deadlocked, where all the weapons looked rather edgier and darker to fit the mood of that game.
yeah, I definitely like the theme going on here. It's very cool. I'm hoping that we'll see like weapons that haven't been mentioned appearing and being just as cool and just as thematic.
Yeah, that is one thing I'm worried about, because so far we know about 7 weapons, and given this is a smaller title, Quest for Booty also had about 7 weapons in it. So I am slightly concerned that this is that we now know the entire arsenal.
To be fair, though, this game is basically double, maybe a little longer, the length of Quest for Booty, and it's double the price of Quest for Booty, so I don't really expect them to be that low on the number of weapons, especially when they're reusing 3 weapons from previous games.
Yeah, at least 3.
I'm sure we at least have the Rhino. We still have to find out how it exactly is, and like, I'm sure they have a couple up their sleeves still.
Yeah. Hopefully they won't run into the issue that Going Commando and Upper Arsenal had, where you pick up a gadget near the end of the game and you only use it for like 1 level and then it's not used again. So I guess that ends it for part 1 of the podcast, episode 7. When we come back, we'll have part 2 where we talk about everything else.
Woo. Yay.
Welcome Welcome back. This is part 2 of episode 7, and now we will cover everything else about Into the Nexus at Gamescom. And the first thing is the history of the Zarkov sector, which is where the game takes place.
This is all you, Kebabs.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, it seems to be like, it's like Polaris's shadow sector in a way, in the sense that it just seems to be a lot more hard-edged than what we're used to seeing out of that galaxy.
So why is it that scary and dark? What happened to it?
Well, according to Talwyn, who says this near the beginning of the Miro City level, it was abandoned by the president of Polaris 20 years beforehand and evacuated, and Vendra and Nefton Krog, the villains, were among them. The sector is said to be haunted by ghostly anomalies, but Ratchet and Clank discovered this is actually due to nevers from another dimension.
Oh no.
So wait, if Vendra and Nefton were evacuated from the Zarkov sector, does that mean that's where the rest of their race, whatever that happens to be, was? Or haven't we gotten any information about that?
Nah, we haven't gotten any information about that. This seems to be like a parallel storyline to Ratchet's backstory.
Yeah, especially with the whole Vendra taunting Ratchet about him not putting in enough effort to find his race and stuff like that.
Yeah, of which several fans have actually pointed this out as well. An interesting aspect, though, is that so far only Ratchet can see the nevers.
Interesting.
That's like the opposite of Tools of Destruction.
So does that mean that the enemies can't see them either, or does that just mean that Clank can't see them?
We don't know. So far, Clank has been the only one around Ratchet when Ratchet sees them, and then notices that Clank can't.
Curious.
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming that someone else will be able to, like, see them, or because they were referred to as ghostly anomalies, and that's why they abandoned the place. So I'm assuming that that wasn't just like poltergeist things moving when they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But actually seeing some scary stuff.
At some point, Clank must gain the ability to see them, because they're the whole reason why he's going into the Nether regions in the first place.
Well, maybe he can only see them when he's in the Nether regions. That would make sense.
Maybe he's just going in blind and
Just running away from things he doesn't even see.
something fourth wall, something suddenly like a force controls Clank's body and he just knows what to do. He doesn't know what's going on, but it just goes right, maybe.
There are so many unfortunate implications of what he just said. So what do you guys think about the levels that we've seen so far?
They look pretty and they look fun. I think the Nether Dimension levels look pretty fun. I mean, there's not much to them, like you mentioned, but the 2D aspect in the gravity changing, whatever the hell's going on with that, looks pretty fun, and it looks like it'll be probably frustrating at points if it's anything like the time puzzles.
Yeah. It seems to be important to note that when you wake up the Nevers, you're not leading them to the rift. They're actually chasing you, so you have to escape it before it, eats you.
Which is also very terrifying if Clank can't see them.
Yeah, or Ratchet's waiting on the other end like, gosh, what's taking Clank so long?
I like the variation between the ruins and the caverns. I mean, it's kind of like a cliche to have like a cavern level to be spooky by now, but I think it's pretty appropriate with the direction the game's going. And there's also the zero gravity outer space looking part that was shown.
Yeah, we've seen that briefly in the original reveal trailer, but not much of it. And also like the spaceship section, I think.
So hopefully we'll have like more than just like city and cave. Hopefully we get that like space wreckage type feel as well as maybe some other things.
I feel like what it is missing with these like caverns and space are space ghost pirates. Needs more of those.
Is that a
Just
typo?
saying.
Come on, Captain Slag.
He's a head.
He could have a ghost body.
I think Zero Caverns does sort of avoid an issue that I've had with most cave sections in games like Uncharted and like Morrow Caverns and Quest of Booty, which is the fact that they just look boring. It's a whole bunch of brown rocks.
If I remember correctly, these rocks look blue with some purple.
Everything has some purple in this game.
Yeah, I have noticed that. There's a lot of purple.
I like purple, so I'm okay with this. And it's a color you don't see too much anymore, really. You
Yeah.
have the orange and you have the blue in variations, and you don't really see any other colors. Like Fuse, right?
Up here, Arsenal was just orange all the time.
Including the graphical user interface.
That annoyed me a lot. I wanted to change the color. Actually, it reminded me a lot of Fallout New Vegas, and I wanted to play that, but I just wanted it to be blue, not yellowy orange. Even though it's my favorite color, I just didn't like it.
But Zero Caverns seem to have avoided looking boring by including bioluminescent plants straight out of Pandora.
Also, something you saw a lot in All for One in the caverns there. There are a lot of bioluminescent things.
Not really. I don't think. What were they called? I don't think the Dead Grove had a lot of that. It just looked like, as I said, another boring caverny cave area. Okay, hold on a sec. I think I need to help my mum get inside.
I can clear my throat now.
10-hour long podcast. Go.
Basically.
Lord, I was born a rambling man.
Okay, I'm back. Where were we?
Something, caverns and ruins, talk of levels.
Okay. Well, I said bioluminescent plants and stuff from Avatar, and that the Dead Grove was still boring to me.
I only remember the charging bug things that annoyed me very much with the trophy
Oh yeah,
that came with avoiding them.
which was nearly impossible. The Miro ruin seems to. It was initially thought that it was a hub area with branching paths, but it seems more like the old Ratchet and Clank games, like the first and second games, where you would have this initial starting area, and then you would have a couple of different story paths. Navalis is a good example. You could go down into that crater and get the coordinates to Metropolis, or you could go through the waterworks system and meet a considerably more grouchy plumber who will give you the coordinates to Iridia. So it's good to see that branching level design is back with a vengeance.
Yes, it seems like this will please a lot of people that have been wanting the branching of levels.
While simultaneously annoying them in other areas.
Oh yes, always.
Meanwhile, I'm just sitting here agonizing over which one to do first because I don't know which one's the main story.
Yeah, that always annoyed me with some of the older games where you couldn't figure out which was the correct one. I mean, usually if it was in view and the other one was somewhat hidden, then it was pretty obvious which one was the main path, and I wouldn't take it.
The worst was going through a bunch of stuff to find out that you need a certain gadget to get through the end of it, then having to go out and do the other path to get the gadget, and then come back and go through it again.
Yeah. What about the Never Dimension levels? What do we think about a look at that?
Well, I believe I've already mentioned what I thought. Looks interesting.
Kind of reminds me of Guacamelee a little bit, except less Mexican, more purple. I think it's just the straight walls and the 2D-ness of it. I just keep expecting Clank to like bounce back and forth between the walls and uppercut to get across things.
Get a full jump.
I hope that the platforming in those levels doesn't get as frustrating as Guacamelee. It's frustratingly awesome, but sometimes leaning on the side of more frustrating than awesome.
Is that because it's difficult?
Yes.
Oh, it's difficult. The platforming in that game is like basically throwback to all the like Sega Genesis NES era platformers where the difficulty is ramped up, because if it was actually easy, you could get through the game in like 10 minutes.
The visuals in Mirror City seem to be pretty cool, like that vista at the end of the demo. That was. You haven't seen that in Ratchet and Clank. You're used to that showing up with Uncharted.
I can't relate to all these Uncharted references because I haven't played them yet.
Well, you should.
I didn't have a PS3, I had an Xbox 360. I know, right? I'm sorry that I couldn't afford the $600 when it first came out.
I saw a mission statement of some sort which suggested that Ratchet and Clank needed to get to an orphanage in the area. So I think that will tie into the Prog Twins' backstory. That may be the building that they're trying to get to.
Interesting.
That seems really plausible.
Add this to the list of things that I have not noticed in these videos. But, oh my god, orphanage sounds interesting in that baby alien creatures.
Maybe the orphanage will be like Shinra Mansion in Final Fantasy VII, where it's a place of both backstory and an important sort of life moment for the villains. I also noticed throughout the Mirror Ruins level that there were a bunch of emblems, and I did a double check back to Going Commando and found that it is very, very similar to the emblem that Thugs for Less used on Snivelak on their doors.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, seeing as Thugs for Less seems to be one of the main group of random grunts you face.
Yeah. Insomniac also mentioned that there is another faction that they haven't mentioned yet, which I think will be the Prog Twins' race when their plan comes into fruition. Although I should point out that I know nothing about the story.
Yeah, it really sounds like it could be something like with the Kragmites, where once they show up, they're like their own main force. So I'm hoping for something like that, where you finally find the Prog Twins race, and then they're like suddenly the main villains instead of Thug for Less.
So long as they don't like phase in and out around you like bastards, I'll be okay with this.
Didn't you use the magnet cannon?
Oh my god, Magnet Cannon was a lifesaver.
Yeah.
I used the throw controller to the side and walk away frustrated option.
Which obviously threw off your tornado launchers. Throwing the controller away like that. I do like that kind of enemy though, which are specifically designed to, be used against a weapon, like the Kragmites and the magnet launchers. Kind of like in the Spyro days, where you could only charge guys with shields or flame those that were too big.
Mm-hmm.
And then figure out what the hell you're supposed to do when you come across a shielded big guy.
Cry a lot.
Any other ideas for what that faction could be?
Well, obviously it could be something completely different and new that we know nothing about.
Evil Lombax is from my best fanfiction.
Sounds good.
I'd really like to see something about, like, the government force of whatever not the sector, but like the galaxy or something, and like actually have them show up instead of it basically being Kronk, Zephyr, Towin, Ratchet, Clank, Quark.
The former president.
Doing all the fighting in the entire galaxy.
Yeah, we've never actually seen the Polaris Defense Force at all.
So it would be something like Fallout 3 in New Vegas, where the oh my god, what's the faction called?
Brotherhood of Steel?
No, maybe. No, the other guys.
The Enclave.
Yeah, the Enclave. Yes, they kind of exist, but you're not sure. They have all the propaganda around, but God knows.
Or the Cloven.
I want to see them still.
They just sound like crazy Russians.
Crazy Russians with superpowers.
The heads-up display and the menus have also been given a slight redesign and a slick crack in time appearance.
Oh yeah.
What does that mean, slick crack in time appearance?
Well, up until Quest for Booty, Insomniac had been using pretty much the same menu system that they started Ratchet and Clank 1 with. But with a crack in time, they sort of spruced it up a bit, added menu animations, and it just looked a lot prettier and more modern.
I see. I never really pay attention much to the menus. They kind of exist for me to do options and stuff and saving and loading. Other than that, I'm too wrapped up in the games.
I liked how a crack in time allowed you to use the, I think it was either the left or the right stick to rotate a 3D model of the weapon you were looking at.
Yes. So cool. My favorite part about the new HUD and all this awesome stuff is the little part where you see the Raritanium ore count.
Oh yes. Raritanium.
I loved that. I loved that in Tools of Destruction, and I am so glad it's making a return.
Yeah, I love that upgrade system from Tools of Destruction.
Everyone does. Unless you don't, in which case you don't matter to me.
Exactly.
Because that was really a great upgrade system, because it really rewarded exploring, and you could actually get things that weren't either regular bolts or gold bolts from exploring and feel like you accomplished something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although you have to admit that it was kind of hilarious that it was called Raritanium, but there were giant chests of it littered all over every level, just waiting to be found.
Unless, of course, you are collecting the only Raritanium in that galaxy. There isn't any Raritanium other than what you're picking up.
But it seems like they've fixed that, because the counts for the Raritanium seem to be a lot smaller this time. The upgrades don't take hundreds of Raritanium, they take like 1 or 2 or 3 Raritanium, I think.
Yeah.
So
I also noticed that with normal Raritanium, assuming that there isn't a Raritanium mod, it seems to be found. Like, you bump into it like gold bolts, rather than it being dropped by enemies or found in a chest. So it seems a lot more rarer than Raritanium, well, Commentanium was in Tools of Destruction.
we'll just call it Unobtainium from now on.
Oh yeah, because we're so slick and so meta.
It definitely looks like the system is a lot more expansive.
Oh, yeah,
I'm excited.
There were so many different things you could get, and the layouts were crazy different.
It seems a lot more open for how you place your mods than the Tools of Destruction one, where it seemed like that one had a couple of branching paths that met up, where this seems more like more of a solid grid where you have to go through. So it seems like you can do a lot more customizing that way than just like powering through upgrades you don't want in order to get to the one you do.
Yeah.
I love the kind of nice little RPG elements you get with it.
To me, it's a lot better than crafting, because to me, crafting has always been that RPG feature that I'm never interested in, because I can't be bothered to, do cooking lessons just to get the best sword. I prefer to find it.
I didn't really like the Constructo weapons too much. I mean, they're fun, I guess, in their own respect, but Raritanium is boss.
Yeah, I think the bad thing about the Constructo weapons was it didn't feel unique, because you could just swap in an acid mod or whatever that would just basically make it do a little more damage. Whereas with the Raritanium, you work up to like the special effect, or like increase bolts or whatever on your way to go there, and it feels like it's a lot more unique and special instead of just like, yeah, I'll slap on this mod that makes it explode after I shoot someone, because that's original.
It would be really cool if, say, at the end of the game you unlocked a bunch of Raritania mods for your old weapons that allowed you to have them be viable against end-game enemies and bosses.
That would be lovely. It always made me sad in the older games where you have like your favorite weapon from the beginning and you get to a point and it's obsolete, doesn't work anymore, but you just continue using it for some reason anyway because you just love it.
Yeah, I call that Lancer syndrome, when they become useless, because it first happened to the Lancer, and it sort of happened a bit less quickly with the mini nuke because it was so powerful you could still actually use it on the weaker enemies.
The mini nuke and going commando, just like as soon as you upgrade to that, you like have to force yourself to go to something else because it just annihilates everything so early on.
Especially with that tempting name, because you haven't even fired yet, but just by virtue of calling it the mini nuke, you know what it does.
Yeah.
The relationship between Ratchet and Vendra Prog has been emphasized a fair bit by Insomniac.
I think they're setting it up very nicely in order to have that very personal feel to the villain, where you get like the connection between them, like with Nefarious contacting Ratchet and stuff, and where you get to know the villain like as much as you know the hero almost. And I feel like that makes villains a lot more compelling and memorable instead of forgettable.
I'm sorry, Nefarious?
Yeah, Nefarious.
It's nefarious.
It's Nefarious. I don't know what you're talking about.
Nefarious, tomato, potato, nefarious.
Tomato, potato.
Hakuna potato. But I do agree. It seems like Vendra seems to take more of a personal interest in Ratchet, like almost like Tachyon did, except that there are some avenues for interpretation because of the fact that Vendra is a female. So you could almost get sort of playfully romantic tauntings.
I feel like some of the main female characters that's everyone loves to pretend are dating Ratchet are going to have an issue with that.
Oh, so Sasha, but not Talon. It's weird how people think that Angela and Ratchet got together even though there wasn't really any romantic behavior between the two.
They looked at each other. That's all they needed.
It was love at first sight, but they didn't mention it.
Yes,
Conveniently
exactly.
enough.
One thing that I enjoyed about the video is that we actually get to see Vendra a little more straight on down in the lower corner. And you can see that she, in fact, does not really look like a Lombax at all.
No, she's
surprise.
As we said before, she looks more like a Marquesian, actually. But she is not a Marquesian. Insomniac have pointed this out. She is not a Marquesian, so don't go thinking that, because you're wrong.
I believe they've said that Vendra and Neftin are, in fact, like a completely new race that we haven't seen, so...
Yeah, like when the Kirchus showed up in Tools of Destruction or the Agorians in A Crack in Time, they were completely new.
Kirchus are so adorable.
And yet everyone is allergic to them. Vendra seems to have this headpiece, which has these two sort of spikes on it, a bit like Maleficent, I think, which caused the confusion with everybody. Two big pointy objects on the head. Well, it must be a Lombax.
Obviously.
The evidence is right
Looks
there.
like a duck, quacks like a duck, etc.
But it's actually a goose. I also noticed that Ratchet's armor is seen in pre-rendered cutscenes, which to me implies that they will be gained on story events rather than actually purchasing them. At least that's my interpretation.
They could do that, but then again, it's not like there haven't been games in the past where it just completely ignored whatever armor you have in order to set like a canon armor.
Size Matters did that, actually. No matter what armor you put on, in the pre-rendered cutscenes, Ratchet would always look like he did in the first game without any armor, and no shirt for the furries.
I kind of prefer that too, especially whenever you have the armors that cover like Ratchet's face and block his facial expressions.
There was also a screenshot of Talwyn in a room that appeared to be on Igliak, which is slightly disappointing to me because I was hoping that she would be more directly involved.
Just because she's away at that point doesn't mean she can't be directly involved at some point.
Yeah.
But I agree, it doesn't look very promising.
Especially with that other screenshot where you could see a hologram of her hand reaching to Ratchet, again implying that she is not directly there.
I don't know. I don't have much to say about Talwyn because I don't really remember much of her from Tools of Destruction. I actually haven't played Quest for Booty where she's prominent, I believe, I guess.
She's there most of the time.
Yeah, so I have a hard time being actually giving anything out on her. Isn't it said that she and Ratchet are like dating? I don't know. How does that work?
Insomniac said that Talwyn is the closest thing Ratchet has to a girlfriend at the moment.
So, friend zone. Okay.
Poor Ratchet.
They appear to act very romantically in the comics, at least.
I guess I did read the comics, but I also read the comics before I played, like, any of the PS3 games. So...
You're not a very good Insomniac fan, are you? You buy an Xbox 360, you read the comics before the PS3 games.
I know. So terrible.
Well, at least you played Resistance.
I did. And it was fun, and I enjoyed it, and I wanted Resistance 4.
Wait, did you play them in the right order?
Actually, I played Resistance 3 first, the first time I went over Josh's house, but I was very drunk and didn't really remember any of it, and I think we fell asleep while we were in the first level, so it doesn't count.
No, so you're still doing it in the wrong order.
She does everything in the wrong order.
Well, I guess the last thing that we'll do is that I made this giant list of things that were mentioned in the Twitch stream because there was just so many, so we'll just sort of do a quick fire back and forth with these various facts that were pointed out.
So many facts.
So I guess I'll start off. There are tadpoles in the pools in Miro City.
I really wish someone would have answered your question in the podcast, or goddammit, Twitch stream. Because I was kind of curious if they actually did, like, respond to Ratchet coming near and, like, running away, swimming away, rather. I guess tadpoles can do either, depending on which stage of life they're in.
Evolving into frogs and eating them, you know, the basics.
Beast did actually confirm on the forums that the tadpoles do not swim away when you get close to them, and you do not get a trophy for doing it. So I'd say is a missed opportunity.
Yes. I don't know, sometimes it's the little things like that that just add a lot to environments, but when you're developing a reasonably sized game like this for a year, I could see why they'd leave it out.
Yeah, I guess.
It's been said that Pollux invented the grav tether to escape and traverse the earthquake environment.
Yeah, the earthquakey environment of Yerrick, it seems, despite it apparently not having a lot of earthquakes.
Yeah, except for the, like, stuff we saw in the demo where, like, the ground will shake and disappear and then Ratchet will have to cross using whatever means.
Yeah, that good old slide trick that I remember not very fondly from Prince of Persia Sands of Time, where you walk on something and it's like, oh no, wait, it's collapsing. Oh, you died. Look how bad you sucked. But for those who can't remember, Pollux is the scientist from A Crack in Time that Nefarious was working with. He was a Terracanoid.
He also has a level 60 wizard with melee ability.
Oh, yeah, I was so impressed. I don't know how he spent the time to do that.
There's going to be apparently a wide open level late in the game. Personally, I'm hoping it's very similar to Sargasso. Like I mentioned earlier, that's one of my favorite levels. And I just love the whole being able to explore everywhere and getting to see a lot more of the environments than just a narrow path that you're forced to go on.
And they said that there's going to be some pretty big environmental changes in that wide open level, I believe, yes?
Well, they specifically said a level that they haven't shown yet will have a lot of environmental changes.
Probably the aforementioned earthquakes that Pollux had to invent the grav tether to get around.
I'm hoping it will be gravity affecting like which direction it is pulled without being in a never region or something like that. Like you're walking along and then all of a sudden gravity is flipped upside down and you have to deal with it. The GrumbleNet preview videos from A Crack in Time and All for One are not returning. I repeat, not returning. But in their place, vendors will have a virtual firing range to test your weapons in, like on the Phoenix and up your arsenal.
I will miss the GrumbleNet preview videos. Those were like my favorite part about finding/buying new weapons.
Speaking of things not returning, there is no Insomniac Museum, but there will be something along the lines of a museum that should apparently please the fans. Maybe a return of tools of production.
So I personally don't remember what tools of production is. Could you inform me on that?
I'd be happy to. Basically, Tools of Production was a cheat that you could unlock in Tools of Destruction, which placed a whole bunch of info box throughout the levels. And you could walk up to them and press triangle and you would hear an audio recording of an Insomniac talking about a particular part of the development process.
Interesting.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so think
I
of
like
the in the Going Commando Insomniac Museum, how you would have these little audio clips in front of exhibits. Take those audio clips and then scatter them throughout the levels as appropriate.
It's basically like watching a movie with the film commentary on.
Yeah, except now you can choose when you want the commentary.
Which is so much better.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they take, if they are doing Tools of Production, they take it one step further and actually the cheat activates exhibits throughout the levels as well.
That would be pretty boss.
I'm skeptical about how much of that stuff they can include on the short time span they've been given to work on the game, but
yeah,
hopefully.
Particularly when you have to take into account the fact that the game also has to render these on top of the normal stuff.
So, there've been announced that Clank will have new features and upgrades. Not the thruster pack, but...
No, I love the thruster pack.
No!
But they haven't really given us any details as to what those would be. So... I'm hoping that's like what Kebabs was saying with the environmental changes thing, where it's some other gravity-based thing. Like, I'm hoping it's something like Clank brings back from basically the netherworld that like gives him the power to like low gravity for a certain time or something like that. That would be really cool to me.
I got the power!
Fortunately, at least, there is going to be a challenge mode. They did not take that away from us.
Like they criminally did in Quest for Booty and All for One and Full Frontal Assault. And all the games I don't like. Who's next?
You are.
Oh, okay. Then I get the boring one where the bugs in the Zero Caverns are called Seraphods. How exciting. Boy, golly gosh, that has got me so anticipated for this game.
That just made my day. In better news, hover boots are likely in some form.
So excited.
I really hope they function similarly to Full Frontal Assault.
Yes.
where you can
And-
just basically zoom around everywhere.
Yeah, just hold
And-
down R2 and you're off.
It seems like, let's see, who said it? I think it was Beast Viddy. One of them on the forums mentioned something have to be maybe skillful to obtain them. So maybe it's not like a core game feature. Maybe it's just tied to unlocking them through skill points.
Yeah.
Which I'd be okay with so long as they're there because they're fun.
Yeah, I'd like it to be a skill point unlock as well through cheats. It would probably be the last one as well.
Probably.
Either that or just make it something you can get during like challenge mode where you've already like walked through the game at your walking pace and then you can just zoom through everything. That'd be awesome.
Or maybe it's something less cryptic and it just happens to be a harder part of the game that we actually have to be skillful to get.
Indeed.
Maybe it's swing shot puzzles again.
Let's see. The Zoni don't appear, but they are mentioned. Thrilling.
Very. So there are apparently going to be some side activities, but they didn't mention what, in order to like give the gameplay variety. So I'm hoping we see some like hoverboard tracks or hover bikes or something like
I
that
hate
again.
you. I hate you. I hate you so much. Shut your mouth.
What about those good old Star Explorer races from Going Commando? against Ace
Ah. Oh my god.
I figured out the trick to those actually. Just point your aiming reticule inside the ring and you'll pass through it pretty much guaranteed.
You mean throw TV out the window? I think that's the answer.
Oh, like a 6-axis. Gold bolts are returning, and thanks to a quick eye, I found that they are used for buying Omega weapons in challenge mode.
Oh
Ooh,
yeah.
Omega weapons.
We also saw them find a gold boat in the Twitch stream, wasn't it? Or I think so. I don't know.
Wouldn't it
But-
be hilarious if in the final game they replaced the gold bolt with something else?
That would be cruel.
But the gold bolts thing sounds similar to the gold weapons from the original game.
Which was a great idea.
They were so awesome.
It made the gold bolts actually seem valuable because picking them up for skins just isn't as exciting for some reason.
Yeah, I like using them for weapons definitely a lot more.
Or armor, just something useful in the game that like helps you.
So, unfortunately, Quark doesn't work, and neither will Clank. It was apparently considered for waking nethers in another dimension, but just punching them made more sense. Sigh.
If only there was a Groovatron.
Yeah, that will probably be Quark's move. And hopefully not Helga's. Nefarious isn't appearing in the game, as he is apparently going through an identity crisis after All for One, although he will be mentioned.
Don't you mean Nefarious?
Yeah, Nefarious.
Alright, I'll call him Clunk from now on.
Like we've mentioned before, the game's gonna cost $29.99.
US.
Yeah, US dollars. Of course, in Denmark, it'll probably be like $740.
And 2 cents.
Yes. I believe, let's see, they have released the Europe pricing of €29.99 euros, although I think the UK pricing is still in limbo, they don't know.
Can't they just use a currency converter and make it easy?
You'd think they would, but, you know.
And Insomniac's done their typical hush-hush on demos and such, and is still a wait-and-see sort of thing, so...
Which is odd, because we've just been spending like an hour or two talking about a demo.
I repeat that I'm still very sad that I couldn't get a hold of PAX Prime tickets so I could play this demo. So mad. So mad.
Well, maybe it will help if you say what the next factoid is. Maybe you'll feel
I
better.
suppose. I guess the wrench is throwable like it was in a crack in time. That'd be really upsetting if they took away the throwing of the wrench. It'd be very odd to
specifically what is meant by that is you could always throw the wrench since Ratchet and Clank won, but by a crack in time, it means that you can throw it while running, while jumping, while twerking, whatever you want. Dan will make an appearance in Into the Nexus, good old Dan Johnson, although he is not going to be as a snowman or as a skin. Maybe, I don't know, a quest for, like the Quest for Booty action figure, perhaps?
Just for the people that don't know, Dan Johnson was an Insomniac employee who passed away, and since then, I believe they've put him in every single Ratchet and Clank game in some form. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kebabs.
Oh, I will. They've actually been putting cameos of him in the game since at least Spyro 2, I believe. In Spyro 2, he was the coins that you would chuck into the fountains.
Most of the Ratchet and Clank games, he's been like a playable skin for Ratchet, except in a few of them he's been different.
Yeah, he in Going Commando and Up Your Arsenal, he was a snowman that you could get a skill point from if you smashed him.
So I thought you were actually going to explain the action figures. Please explain Quest for Booty action figures to someone who has not played this one.
Oh,
what are they?
In Quest for Booty, you could find a sort of a package of merchandise inside one of the caves on Ulafar Islands that you have to swim underwater to get to, and it has the Dan skin posed like an action figure in it.
That is cute.
Yeah, he's also actually appeared in the Resistance games. I believe that in Resistance 2 there was a billboard for Dan Johnson's farm-grown eggs.
Amazing.
Which is hilarious because that's an Easter egg.
So, there seems to be some doubt, confusion, I don't know, but the game is single player only. That means there's no multiplayer. I believe no sort of thing like share your best score with your friends. Nothing. Single player only.
No co-op either.
But I really wanted to play as a second Lombax.
But Ted Price said all of Insomniac games were going to have a multiplayer component. Was he a liar?
And obviously it's going to be on the Xbox One, right? So, Ratchet still can't swim anymore.
Well, he can swim, he just doesn't.
Well, if he doesn't do it, how are we supposed to know that he can still swim?
He forgot. Hit his head.
He did it in Quest for Booty. He actually did rather well. He could swim as fast as the Hydro Pack.
I wonder if there will be just no swimming areas, like no suitable water, or if we'll see the return of the giant Lombax eating fish. That was the bane of my existence.
I think it'll be both. The only water that Ratchet could swim in is these shadow kiddie pools, like in Corral Canyon. The known Raritanium upgrades that I could spot include rate of fire, ammunition, bolts, how much ammo is actually coming out of the crates, range, and the good old how much Raritanium enemies drop when you kill them with said weapon.
So there's more than gold bolts to just find and collect. I mean, obviously we've mentioned the Raritanium's going to be more of a fine thing, but they haven't really expanded on what collectibles there will be, but I'm hoping for holo plans.
Yeah, I hope for holo plans as well. In addition to, finding the holo plans, and then when you give it to the person who constructs it, whoever that could possibly be, you would have to pay a fee of some kind. The good old small fee from Moneybags.
There is an arena, but it isn't being talked about. It does have an announcer, though. Okay, Bobs, you should definitely be the announcer. You'd be perfect.
I'm really hoping for Mustachio Furioso to make a brilliant comeback to the arena.
I hate that skin. It's so lazy. It's just a pair of glasses. It isn't even
It's
funny.
so amazing, you mean?
As the gag of Ratchet wearing Groucho glasses, which is what they're called in the Battleplex to throw off Tachyon, that was brilliant. But as a general skin, I don't think it works.
It definitely does.
Not.
You're wrong.
in a correct sort of way. There are no spaceship sections where you can control a Philion like in A Crack in Time, but you can still use it to jump from planet to planet, and there is still flying stuff with a Philion at all. So maybe like the Star Fox-like sections from Tools of Destruction, maybe, perhaps?
Yeah, so basically just no free flying from planet to planet, like...
With moons and stuff.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Hopefully when they make another full-size Ratchet, they bring that back, because I really like that in A Crack in Time, but we'll see.
And maybe they'd have the budget to include the Y-axis.
So there's no Angela for good reasons. It's probably referring to the Crack in Time radio announcement hinting that she and Max fled to another dimension.
Which hopefully is going to be something they'll touch upon in the next generation of Ratchet games, especially with Tailwind being prominent.
Or not, and can just continue torturing people forever. Which would also be fun to watch.
Let's have 2 more kiddie games. I anticipate that the reason why Angela isn't included is kind of what they did with A Crack in Time, where they just simplified the story. Because after Tools of Destruction, they tried to introduce like 500 different plot elements at once, and it didn't work.
Especially since it's a smaller game, I'd expect. Like, you wouldn't want them to try and jam as many familiar faces in as possible when it didn't really fit.
But more story is better, right? We can just, give Insomniac suggestions on the forums, and they could just jam-pack all of the story into the next game, right? We can all be writers for them, right? Yeah.
And then demand payment.
Yes, I have great ideas, Insomniac.
So do I, but they just don't log into fanfiction.net. But I think the main point of Into the Nexus is, in terms of the story, is A, challenge Ratchet on a certain decision he made at the end of A Crack in Time, which I won't spoil this time, and B, give Ratchet an alternate way to access the Lombaxes other than using a Dimensionator.
Blood sacrifice.
That'd be a pretty amazing dark ending.
Or mechanical sacrifice. You can just sacrifice Clank.
That's never gonna happen.
This is called good story writing. Look at how George R.R. Martin does it. Break everyone's heart, get more ratings.
Or you could do what Insomniac does with Resistance 2 and make all your fans cry and angry.
You mean exist and do anything at all?
Exactly.
You can't just do what J.K. Rowling does and kill off every second character in the last one.
Oh my god.
As we have mentioned, skill points are confirmed to be in the game, as we have implied by talking about things unlocking via skill points.
And there still will be a pre-order bonus, but we still don't know what it will be.
Probably an early unlock or something like that. We talked about what the pre-order bonus we would like it to be last time, didn't we?
Indeed we did.
I still haven't come up with a good one.
Oh, well, maybe my next episode you will.
I'm still thinking.
It's like a 3-month delay before you finally think of a pre-order bonus you like.
How about an extra level exclusive to the PlayStation 3 version of the game?
You mean opposed to the Xbox One version of the game?
Yes, that is totally coming out and does exist.
Definitely. Microsoft threw money at Sony to buy some rights to Ratchet and Clank.
I wouldn't know how I would feel if that actually happened and Ratchet and Clank went multi-platform.
I would like to see it happen just so I could see... People wouldn't just squirm, they would die.
They would say that Insomniac are betraying them, like they did with Sunset Overdrive, actually, and Fuse.
Yes.
Speaking of things that aren't likely to happen, there's probably not going to be a collector's edition with this game, which...
No.
I mean, we really should have seen coming because how many smaller not spin-off, but epilogue type things come with a collector's edition.
But if there's going to be a collector's edition, it will probably come out in Europe. Because Europe gets everything awesome with Ratchet and Clank, and this makes me very angry and upset. And I try to buy it off of eBay, and I don't even get a crack in time. I get Tools of Destruction, and I hate people.
What about the special edition of All for One? That is both exclusive in Europe and a smaller Ratchet title that got a special version.
And a bitch to find.
I can find it easily though, it's right here in my cabinet.
I will take that one, if you please. But yes, don't use that word, all for one with full game. It makes people uncomfortable.
Or All for One and any implications of, say, canon, or it happened, or it was maybe good.
Pretty much.
It has been confirmed that there are multiple difficulty modes, and there was an implication that the challenge mode difficulty seems to be able to be used in a normal playthrough, like the Exterminator and Hardcore difficulties from Deadlocked and A Crack in Time.
Which are actually harder than what I would expect them to be. Start off Deadlocked on the hardest possible difficulty and failure everywhere. Failure. So much failure.
Yeah, if you complain about Ratchet games being too easy, then start a normal game, like a fresh new game, on the challenge mode difficulty, Hardcore or Exterminator, and then get back to me. Especially after facing Vorsalon at the end.
Oh god. I tried that and just went to easy mode to get the trophy for that or whatever. I was like, you know what? No. Easy mode, kill him. Yeah.
I wonder if it would be like in Quest for Booty, where the harder the difficulty is, the less experience that enemies give you when you kill them.
That is cruel.
So, Insomniac has said that there's not going to be a focus directly on the Lombaxes or any of Ratchet's relatives. It's not like he's going to randomly meet up with his second cousin, Billy Bob Lombax, on the planet or anything.
Billy Bob Lombax.
Well, that renders my fanfiction non-canon then.
So for anyone hoping that this was suddenly going to be like out of nowhere, like, oh hey, Lombaxes everywhere, you're probably going to be disappointed.
That kind of voids the point of A, the Lombaxes being missing, and B, Ratchet being the last Lombax.
I suppose it needs to be mentioned over and over again as well that Into the Nexus takes place after Full Frontal Assault, which, like All for One, happened and is canon, and it does exist, and it can be said to be a pretty good game.
Yes, it is. If you play it in the right way, while drunk and high and not looking at the screen.
Or if you actually do play it at all and just instead of just shitting all over it. But, we can't do that.
Yeah. Just to set the record straight, the specific order of the PS3 games is Tools of Destruction, Quest for Booty, A Crack in Time, the comics, All for One, Full Frontal Assault, Into the Nexus.
But wait, no. There's not going to be any more Ratchet and Clank games after Into the Nexus.
Really?
Yes, they're coming out with another one, therefore series is ending. Didn't you know? That's how it works.
No. I never heard of this. My brain is melting from the revelation.
You apparently haven't seen like the 5 topic threads on it on the forums. Or it can also be said, since Insomniac is owned by EA and or Microsoft, I'm not entirely sure which one at this point, Ratchet and Clank is ending. Into the Nexus does not exist.
I do find that weird how fans think that just because there is a relation to some other company that isn't the one they've been working with for the past 15 or so years, that that means that their particular franchise is ending.
Yep.
There are many nods, as we mentioned, to previous stuff like Zony and the Secret Agent Clank TV franchise. Insomniac seems to have said that they tried to cram in a lot of that stuff as they could.
So it's interesting to note that this runs on the latest version of Insomniac's engine that they've used actually for all their PS3 exclusives. The whole Resistance series, Tools of Destruction, and Quest for Booty in a Crack in Time. Also All for One and Full Frontal Assault. So they're not doing anything new or special engine-wise, which hopefully means that since they're really familiar with this engine at this point, that's probably why they're able to crank out so much content so fast in this year-long cycle and not have to fight with like the physics of things as much.
All for One did look really pretty.
Yes, so pretty.
And it's also worth noting that this engine wasn't used for Fuse. Insomniac came up with a different engine for that to develop for multi-platform, which is also coincidentally being used for Sunset Overdrive for the Xbox One.
Theories, conceptions, random speculations.
There is a melee-like weapon, which is probably a reference to the Netherblades. And along with other weapons, there is no Groovitron, but there is a Groovitron element in the game, which unfortunately still will not be any twerking.
Maybe it would be like Groovitron mines that you could trigger throughout the environment, or maybe an arena challenge like Smackdown at the Disco from the Fight Festival.
That one was a pain.
You just had to hyperstrike all of them. It was easy.
But we still know basically nothing about the Nether Blades other than melee weapon, possibly called the Nether Blades. So hopefully that's at least one weapon that we don't have too much info on. So
we're all just assuming that it's basically going to be the return of the Razor Blades, but cooler and more purple.
Yes. Needs more purple. Needs more purple everywhere.
And the last thing that was mentioned on the Twitch stream that is worth mentioning is that Lockstrafe is in the game.
Woo!
And that the controls are basically an evolution of the Full Frontal Assault controls. Which, sorry, I said the forbidden words.
You did.
But I'm looking forward to that because I really like that control system. Except for one or two spots where it got awkward, but in general.
How did you select the quick select in Full Frontal Assault? Was it with a right stick like All for One, or a triangle like all the others?
I think it was both.
Really?
Well, the right stick by default does the camera in Full Frontal Assault.
The way that you use the hover boots in Full Frontal Assault is easily the best. Just hold down R2 and you're off.
Yes, the best.
Well, I guess that's it. We've gone through everything.
Hooray! Into the Nexus is chalking up to be something awesome, I think, in very purple.
Yeah, despite all of the things said about the game, most people seem to be very anticipated for it, and I think that it looks like a return to what feels like the PlayStation 2 days, with a lot of variety, just very solid work.
Seems like people generally appreciate that, other than the fact that it's a little shorter, and God forbid it's actually cheaper instead of $60, but you know, who wants to save money? Speaking of which, we still don't have a release date for it other than holiday 2013.
Not spring, or summer, or winter, or the solstice. It is holiday 2013. Which actually implies that it will come out after the PlayStation 4.
Yes.
Because holiday to me says sometime in November.
Yeah, I don't think they'd want it to be too overshadowed by the PS4. But at least it seems like they're already moving to have, like, a bit more advertisement for it. At least in, like, you know, how Sony actually teased it. So we had that. Hopefully they'll do a little more of that, and maybe, like, if it is released in late November, early December, they kind of like jump on the wagon with like the winterizer and use that to advertise it in some fashion.
Yeah, because for Americans, that of course will be coming out around Christmas time, so you can imagine like a weapons testing ad where it's like, how did you create so many snowmen? And then a Chihuahua walks along and he turns it into a snowman.
Yes, I was actually thinking about that whenever we were mentioning the weapons testing earlier. I thought about the advertisements they used for Resistance 3, was it? I think one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that would be perfect and very fun. They should do it. Hint, hint.
They should do a line of kids using Into the Nexus weapons to do the chores. So, you know, taking out the trash with the vortex grenade.
Really, they should just bring back the weapons not meant for this world from the PS2 days.
Please.
Just so that we could see more awesome props in the studio.
Yes.
Real life winterizer, make it happen, Insomniac.
I thought that was called Jack Frost. Well, I guess that does it for episode 7. I'm KBABZ.
I'm JMW.
I'm Zebra.
I can't believe I remembered my username. I'm glad I did.
So proud.
We'll start making you wear a name tag. You can look down whenever you forget.
But then it would be upside down. I would think my username is like Zababsk. I guess we'll see you guys the next time there is Insomniac news.
Hopefully with more Sunset Overdrive.
And
Yeah.
hopefully very soon.
Hopefully.
I think Josh hopes there will be more Resistance next time.
I do too.
I don't really expect any of that anytime soon. Maybe 2014.
I know there will be at least one of you in the audience who will think that there will be some Spyro news. There won't, really. There won't.
Disruptor 2, where is it?
I'd just be happy with Disruptor on PSN, to be honest.
HD Disruptor.
I'm sick and
No,
tired of
you
playing
can't
it on my
just-
emulator. I feel dirty playing an Insomniac game on an emulator. It's not legit.
How dare you?
Too legit to quit.
Kiss, kiss.
Well, I guess we'll see you next time.
Adios.
Ah.
Bye! And cue theme music.